Good morning, guys. It's Tim Barnes here from Barnes Violins. I'm going to talk a little bit about bows today. I've got a few points to cover, and then I had a few questions asked that I'll try to address as well. So, first of all, the general question, why are bows important? The bow is really important when you're picking out a bow for violin, viola, cello, or bass, because really the bow is what makes the voice of the instrument. You can't change how the instrument sounds, the voice in and of itself, in terms of the violin, but all the sound production happens with the bow. And so the bow really does matter quite a bit. And as players get better, as they improve and can discern the differences in quality, a lot of what I'm going to touch on today will make sense to the player and not just sound a little bit like a sales ploy, which it really isn't. This is really meant more for educational purposes. So one of the questions we get is, why do the prices in bows vary so much? The simple answer is it's a quality issue, and in terms of one, the materials that the bows are made of, and then also how much time, effort, and energy was spent in terms of the manufacturing, making of the bow, as well as to some extent artistry and who made the bow, etc., can come into play. But simply put, you can find a lot of deals out there for very cheap bows, $20, $25, and generally speaking, it's not a good idea if one cares at all about the playability of the stick. So for us, for example, the entry-level bow that we sell for violin is a $50 fiberglass bow. Not super fancy, but the bow plays well. We've tested a lot of bows in this price point and whatnot, and this is the one that we feel plays the best, most consistently, and is actually a good playing stick. I actually sell these even to professional players who use them for second bows for outdoor purposes and whatnot, because they are tough, but they also play well. So the issue gets to be, if you try to go too inexpensive, usually the player is going to suffer in terms of quality and ultimately really in terms of playability, not to mention the voice. So the next question I have is, what are the benefits of investing in a good bow? Well, again, my answer would be, is it situationally appropriate? A beginner does not need a really expensive, fantastic bow, but it is important even for a beginner to have tools that are good and that they can develop on. So I think that the perspective of just getting the least expensive thing until I see if my child is serious about this isn't always the best course of action. It's good to at least get a good, decent, usable tool that even a beginner can improve with, versus just going the least expensive route. So benefits are that when a player can discern and tell the difference, it makes a huge difference. Not only the sound that the bow makes with the instrument, but also playability aspects. Is it well balanced, balanced evenly? And largely, players can tell when they like something and they can use it well, even if they can't describe why. So these are some of the things that we go through at Barnes Violins when we're trying to help clients, customers find an appropriate bow to go with their instrument. And ultimately, again, it really is a personal decision, because regardless of our opinion, what really matters at the end of the day is if the player can tell, does notice a difference, both in sound and playability. So yes, and the bow does affect the sound of the instrument. Every bow will be a little bit different in terms of the voice it creates with the instrument. There are differences between carbon fiber, fiberglass, and wood, both Brazil wood and Pernambuco. They all have slight differences. But what I would say is to be a little bit cautious about just thinking that one of those things is superior to all the others. It's not always the situation. I have some private teachers that really prefer Pernambuco bows. That's fine, but I would always recommend to try to keep an open mind, in the sense of that sometimes there are some great carbon fiber bows that really might be worth trying. And I've got a couple of other examples of bows here to just show you as well. Actually, I think I've got three. And so I have one step up from the fiberglass bow that I showed earlier, and this is actually a carbon fiber violin bow, but it's wrapped with Pernambuco. It has a Pernambuco veneer wrapped around the carbon. So essentially, in theory anyway, what that creates is a little bit warmer vibration with the instrument than would be straight carbon fiber. This again, everything take with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, it's when you put the bow to the instrument and play, can you tell, can you discern? And again, this is not a terribly expensive bow. You know, you're getting into, I think about $175. That first fiberglass bow I showed you is $50, and bang for the buck, I have not found a better bow that would sell at $50. So those are two examples there. I'm gonna just move along here, I think, with showing you another example of this is a Pernambuco bow. This is a cello bow, nice stick. It's Brazilian and made by a good reputable maker. Pretty. It represents well for the price point that it is. This bow, and I'm just going to give you the number, this sells at a little over $2,000 is the price point for this. And again, it's just to try to give you an idea that a beginner does not need to buy a $2,000 bow. But once a player develops to the point where they're a pretty serious player, and say preparing for high school, or they're playing competitions, or they're going to All-State, and et cetera, and when the player gets the bow in their hands, they put it on their cello and they test if they can discern the difference, then it starts to really make sense. And parents also begin to really understand the differences with these. It's not as random as you might think. This also has really nice silver fittings, Parisian eye here. It's a beautiful Pernambuco stick, and just an example of that cello bow. I also have like an upscale Arcus bow, which we are dealers for Arcus bows, or high-end carbon fiber bows. This is a really lovely top-of-the-line example. This is a P9 viola bow, lovely. Has gold fittings, and it's pricey. This bow is gonna be right around the $8,000 price point. And again, it's not to try to sell you guys something you don't need, but for players who are really looking for top of the line, I've sold several of these to some very fine players who love these bows. And it just, again, gets into personal preference. My mind goes to a little bit, you might ask the question, well, why in the world would a carbon fiber bow be so expensive? There's a tremendous amount of research and science that's gone into making this bow. And really fine players can not only discern, but they're more than willing to pay the money for these bows. My own opinion about that is certainly that they are wonderful sticks, and certainly worth trying out when one is shopping in that price point. Say you're getting into the $8, $10, $12, $15,000 price range, and then just comparing. So again, I'm repeating myself over and over here, but ultimately the true test is, for a player, can I tell? Can I discern the difference? And so this is again an example of, clearly it's a beautiful bow anyway. I mean, it's got, again, lovely, just aesthetically, gold fittings, et cetera, but gold tip. But I can tell you, in the hand, this thing really, it's an exquisite playing stick. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea. My overall answer in terms of talking about bows is they are important. But I think it's case sensitive in terms of what's appropriate for a player. You don't need a super expensive bow, you know, when you're starting out. But that doesn't mean I don't think it's important for you to have good equipment and things that you can learn on. And that's the thing that we find folks kind of do themselves and their kids a disservice when they try to order things online without having gone through some due diligence and really trying things out. And that's one of the things that you can do at Barnes Violins. You can come in here and try many different bows, violins, violas, cellos, basses, etc., and ultimately draw your own conclusions, because that's usually what works best for us, when a player figures out, aha, and they can discern what the difference is. And it really is a process. So I hope this is helpful a little bit. Please like and subscribe our channel. We would certainly appreciate that. And keep the questions coming. I'll try to answer any questions that come to us as quickly as I can. Thank you so much and have a great day.